Forgetting the self. In Kabbalah and other spiritual traditions, the mystic goal of embodying the virtues of God is sometimes called forgetting the self. Forgetting the self means forgetting about the lesser self, the human ego. It means emptying yourself to make room for God. Forgetting the self is the ultimate expression of humility. The 18th century Hasid Azakar Burr of Zlotshov says that humility is the goal of all spiritual practices. The essence of the worship of God and all of the mitzvot and all of the commandments is to attain the state of humility, namely, to understand that all one's physical and mental powers and one's essential being are dependent on the divine elements within. One is simply a channel for the divine attributes. One attains such humility through the awe of God's vastness, through realizing that there is no place empty for him. The Hasidic leader, Dov Bayer, taught, think of yourself as nothingness and forget yourself totally. If you think of yourself as something, then God cannot clothe himself in you, for God is infinite. No vessel can contain God unless you think of yourself as ayin, as nothing. Another Hasidic writer uses similar language to describe the inspired preacher. One who preaches for the sake of heaven must consider that the intellect and the sermon are not his. Rather, he is as dead as a trampled corpse, and all is from God. May his name be blessed. God is putting into his mind the words and the moral message that he is delivering to the congregation. So each word should feel like burning fire, and he should feel compelled to let them all out. Otherwise, he is like a prophet who suppresses his prophecy. The same principle of allowing oneself to be channeled for the divine applies to those who pray. Daniel Mack says that Hasidism teach that the mystic's only active role is the decision to pray and the effort to maintain the clarity essential for conveying divine energy. The mystic allows himself to be the instrument, and God does the rest. In one Hasidic work, we read, one who merits this level of beginning an instrument for the conveyance of divine energy is nothing but a channel through whom all conducted words from on high. This person merely opens his mouth. The essential condition for prayer is that one be clean from all dross, so that the voice from above not be realized in his voice. Everyone can merit this level. Their voice is the voice of the Shekinah. As it were, they are simple vessels. In such a state, explained Matt, the subject and the object of prayers are one and the same. One worships God with God. God becomes like a high priest serving himself through human prayer. Dov Barrett sums it all up when he says, whatever one does, God is doing it. Other mystics of the world's religious speaks about forgetting the self. Teos, for example, used the phrase forgetting the self or losing the self to describe the process of losing the sense of a self that is separate from the Teo, from ultimate reality. They say losing the self does not mean obliterating your identity. It means not letting your lesser self get in the way of the Teo. The Sufi poet Rumi describes the process of forgetting the self as the abandonment of the lesser self. Self-abandonment, he says, is the prerequisite to the mystic ascent to God. Ere it is annihilated, no longer soul, finds admittance to the divine hall of audience. What is ascension to heaven? Annihilation of self. Self-abandonment is the creed and religion of lovers. Jesus also experienced the same process of forgetting the self and knowing, becoming a vessel for God. But he said, "My Father worketh hereto, and I work." The Son can do nothing for himself, but what he seeth the Father do. I can of my own self do nothing. I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father, which hath sent me. Believest thou that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me. He doeth the works. Jesus taught the 14th century St. Catherine of Siena that the secret of developing a mystical and intimate relationship with God was, again, forgetting the self, becoming, as Dolbear says, nothingness. One day Jesus appeared to Catherine as she was praying and said, "Do you know, daughter, who you are and who I am? If you knew these two things, you would be blessed. You are that which is not. I am he who is. If you have this knowledge in your soul, the enemy can never deceive you. You will escape all his snares. You will never consent to anything contrary to your commandments, and without difficulty, you will acquire every grace, every truth, every light." With that lesson, Catherine became fundamentally learned, writes her biography, Eugenio Giordani. She was founded upon a rock. There were no more shadows. I nothing, God all. I none being, God being. Forgetting oneself through the supreme humility is the essence of the mystic's path. It is what allowed the ancient prophets to be infused with tremendous power as they delivered the messages of God in the Spirit of the Lord. It is what empowered mystics like Catherine of Siena to change the course of the church, and leaders like Gandhi to change the course of history. And it is what can empower you to change the world. Ralph Waldo Emerson, whom author Thomas More rightly calls one of the great soul doctors of our American history, describes the empowerment in terms of the unlimited power of God that literally surges through us. The spirit of mysticism and the Kabbalah breathes through this passage from this essay, Nature. Spirit does not act upon us from without, but spiritually or through ourselves. Therefore, that spirit, that is the supreme being, does not build up nature around us, but puts it forth through us, as the life of the tree puts forth new branches and leaves through the pores of the old. As a plant upon the earth, so a man rests upon the bosom of God. He is nourished by unfailing fountains and draws at his need inexhaustible power. Who can set bounds to the possibilities of man? Man has access to the entire mind of the Creator. He is himself the Creator in the finite. Interpreted in Kabbalistic terms, Emerson is saying that we are nourished by the light of Insof that flows through the unfailing fountains of the Sapphira. And we can indeed draw inexhaustible power from them when we forget ourselves, when we empty ourselves and let God in. The process of forgetting the self, of self-emptying and being filled with the attributes and energy of God takes place step by step, day by day. At a certain point, you will find that God becomes so much a part of you that he is the one who is thinking, feeling, talking, working, loving, caring, and comforting you. That is when the path of the mystic reaches its highest and most practical expression. For when we are one with God, we truly bring heaven to earth.